Boston, and beyond. Heat981fm.com and iHeartRadio.
Nancy, Smokehouse. It's the urban heat. Shout out to Coach Higgins. To conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. On the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 Coach La If you got something on your mind, you can call in, you can hit a line. She the realest, ooh, she the realest. You can tap in, love, oh, get a business. To empower you, so that you can do everything that you want to. Kicking in with Coach Allen, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. On the urban heat, just calling. This with Coach La 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 Coach La 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 La.
What's going on? What's going on? Good evening and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach La. I'm your favorite around the way therapist. They call me Coach. And you are tuned into the Urban Heat 98.1 FM. We are radio with a purpose, bridging communities in Boston and beyond. Tonight, I got a special show for y'all. One, you get Coach all to yourself. In a true therapeutic fashion, right? You get your favorite therapist with no guests. So tonight, you get an opportunity to call in 617-238-7111. That's 617-238-7111 if you want to get on the virtual couch and talk to Coach. So what are we talking about tonight? Well, tonight I want to talk about a concept called confirmation bias. And I also want to talk about the duality of reality. Most of you probably know what's going on with Sean Carter, Mr. Puffy. It's all over the news. And once again, you know, the internet never, ever fails. And I was thinking about what would I talk about tonight? You know, come online and no guests. You know, what's going on, Chris? Thank you for tuning in. What would I talk about with you guys? And what would be relevant, right? And what are some things that might be causing a level of stress, frustration between this political climate that we find ourselves in? A lot of the leaders, entertainers, and people that we look up to have grown up listening to, like, we now learn all these things about them. And you might feel like, what is going on in the world? Like, what is really going on in the world? But the reality of it is that most of us live in two worlds, right? Some of us, for Black folks, you know, all the shout out to all of us out there to understand code switching, multiple hats, you know, multiple ways you need to be in different environments, the pressure to try to assimilate and to fit in. A lot of these different things are all part of this idea of the duality of a reality and also confirmation bias. So first and foremost, right, what is confirmation bias? I'm gonna keep it real simple tonight. Take it all the way back to the basics, right? Because I'm seeing all of this going on and a lot of us are trying to figure it out. And this is not just happening with adults, but also with our youth that are just trying to understand the world. And when I think about my clients that are coming to therapy, trying to understand themselves, the intersection of their identity, all these polarized thought patterns of what's right, what's wrong, black and white, where's the gray? It's just so many things between gender identity, just sexuality, religion, all these things that we constantly are grappling with in the world creates a lot of confusion, especially for our young people who are trying to understand concepts like we grew up hearing, do as I say and not as I do. That's a concept of a duality of reality, right? When someone says, I know you see me doing all this stuff, but don't do what you see me do. Do as I tell you to do, because what I'm telling you to do is better. I want you to be better than me. And then you sit back and go, well, how can you tell me to be better when you ain't being better? So these are all of the things that a lot of us grew up seeing. And it's still really it's true today. So confirmation bias is people's tendency to process information by looking for interpreting information that is consistent with their existing beliefs. Now you might say, what in the world? What does that mean, right? And really, when you break it all down, is what you believe in. Not the other person may not believe in the same thing. So we have a tendency to look for evidence. I call your receipts to justify our perspective. This idea that we want to be right. And a lot of people say, I don't want to be right, but most of us want to be right. Like if I have a particular perspective, I am going to debate, argue, uphold, advocate for my position. And I'm going to look for evidence to back my position up. And that's just a human tendency. So then the next thing, well, what is a belief? And for some people, you might be like, Coach, why are you going to the basics? We all know what a belief is. But do we really? Right? Because when we think about what's going on, even in the political climate that we find ourselves in, it's really down to beliefs and values. You know, it's an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. It's trust, it's faith, or confidence in someone or something. So, I've seen a lot of people saying that, I'm not standing with Kamala. I don't believe in our political system. I'm not going to vote because, it doesn't help me. It doesn't do anything for me. It has no purpose. Like, I don't believe in the politicians. I don't believe in any of it. But you believe in something. So what do you believe in? Or the statement of, if you don't believe in something, you'll fall for everything. Right. So all of these things got me just thinking, so let me put this up. Chris, you got a great point here. Hypocrites get very little respect. You have to mean what you say and stand on business. Be the example. I agree, but then I push back on that and I say, well, is there times where that integrity gets challenged, right? And you have to turtle up. You have to play your position. You can't speak on something. And this goes back to, are we being our authentic selves? And what do you risk when you decide to be your authentic self? There's some people that will say, you know what? I'm going to be myself. I don't care who likes me. I don't care who agrees with me. Take it or leave it. This is who I am. And for some people, we sit back and we go, but wait a minute, though. When do you challenge that perspective so that you can grow and you can be a better person? Because a lot of people stand in their belief, even if their belief is there's all this evidence to say you need to change how you think. For instance, racism, right? And some people don't, no matter what has been, what's going on, friend? Hey, LaDonna, thank you for tuning in. No matter who, what, how much evidence about racist thought patterns, they still hold true to their belief system and they won't let it go. Why are some people like that? No matter how much evidence, how many different situations and events that have come about in this world, they still hold on to the racist doctrine. And what we now have is microaggressions, subliminal racism. We have things that only people say behind closed doors. They know better not to say it out in public because they don't want to get canceled. They don't want to lose their business. So they decide to lie. They decide to withhold the truth, right? They decide that, you know what? I know I can't say that because I have something to lose. So I challenge this idea that everybody's being their authentic selves and we're all just out here saying whatever we want to say, however we want to say it. And we don't ever challenge that, because you'll have somebody come back later and apologize. Or they'll make a contradicting statement to, don't take me serious. I was upset. I didn't mean that. So we find ways to sort of wiggle ourselves out of looking like the bad guy. Most people want to be liked. Now, push back on me. I challenge anybody you want to call in and tell me I'm wrong. I'm always up for a good debate. I'm not here to say that I'm right about everything, because right now I'm sharing my opinion and my perspective, right? And you have a right to your perspective. So you can definitely challenge it and give me your outlook on things. You can call in 617-238-7111. 617-238-7111. What are we talking about tonight? Is confirmation bias. So once again, what is confirmation bias? That is people's tendency to process information by looking for or interpreting information that is consistent with their existing beliefs, right? So at the end of the day, what do you believe in? And then I challenge, why do you believe it? What's your evidence that you're using to justify your belief system? Because there's always, my next thing, something that we call the duality of reality, right? So what is the duality of reality, right? It's two things, right? We got night and day, right? We got good versus evil. So for everything that you have a perspective, there's somebody that has an opposing perspective, opposing view, right? They don't agree with what you think. That's consistent. No matter how we look at it, there's always somebody that's going to have a difference of opinion to what you think. And for some people, you don't like that, right? That makes you uncomfortable, but that's just the truth, right? None of us all believe the same thing. So what do we do with all of this stuff, right? How do we deal with these two opposing ideas, right? And that's a philosophical idea that reality is made up of both physical and non-physical substance. The idea is known as dualism, right? I think that gray and that place of having to hold two truths is one of the most confusing things that we have in this world. That is what brings most people to therapy. How can I both love and despise you? How can I want to get away from you and not be bothered with you, but miss you? And holding these two things is so overwhelming. The idea that we have to live with the idea that eventually everyone dies, and we get up every day and still have to try to live our best life, knowing that any moment somebody close to us, even ourselves, could be gone. How do you live with that? And for some people, that is so overwhelming that they have a really hard time doing life with these concepts. So I challenge, how do people do it? How do you do it? How do you move through life holding these very heavy dualities of reality that we all die at some point? Sometimes it's planned, sometimes we know, sometimes it's all of a sudden. I mean, I hope that I can die of old age and get to see everything that I want to see. I love how Cicely Tyson lived out her life into her 90s, doing what she loved. I would love that for myself, right? But the reality of it is at some point, I am no longer going to be here. And sometimes that's real heavy to know, right? And some days it's heavy than other days. The idea that my father is no longer physically here and that I still have to get up every day and still try to live is a difficult feeling to hold and to move through life with, but we do it. So when people tell me that, I don't know how I'm going to get through something, I often tell them, you get through so many things already and you don't even realize the things that you hold and still push through, right? So, yeah. So at the end of the day, Chris, you got another great point. You always make good comments. I should have brought you on here. You got to call in. At the end of the day, what do you believe in and why? Yes, right. And I challenge you to journal about it, to just sit with yourself for a second. Because sometimes we're just talking and we just say things. And we don't think about, well, where did that start and where did it come from? So I know a lot of my conditioning, right? A lot of my thoughts come from my upbringing, right? It comes from my parents. And then it comes from my education. So a lot of people don't believe in college or believe in, going to school. But I think education is something that's so important. Be you just read books, be you take courses, But the more education you get and the more you're always open to learning and being curious about things, helps you to challenge confirmation bias, right? Because your bandwidth for beliefs expands, right? Your understanding of the world increases. Your thoughts about things and your critical thinking is challenged. So you start to ask questions. The things that get you upset start to shift because you start to ask yourself, wait a minute, why am I upset about that? Therapy helps you to expand your bandwidth of understanding and knowledge, right? So, all right. I know I'm dropping a lot on y'all. Y'all are listening to Conversations with Coach La live in the Urban Heat Studios. We are radio with a purpose. I come on every Sunday night at 10 p.m. and typically I have a guest. Tonight I'm solo, and I decided to talk about confirmation bias and the duality of reality. And a lot of this what sparked this was everything that's going on with Sean Puffy Combs and just our political climate and young people, youth, just listening to some of the things that youth are grappling with. Hey, Karen, that the youth are grappling with really made me say, maybe we need to just go back to the basics of why we're having a hard time digesting what's happening right now and why it's hard to engage in it. Because it feels like you're being duped. It feels like it doesn't make sense. It feels like you're being gaslit. In terms of, on the one hand, you see one thing, but then you know that there is another reality that they're not telling you. There's some things that are not being disclosed to you. That's a difficult place to sit, right? And that's just the truth. I was thinking about like military or even at work. Let me take it even on a even more layman's terms. At work, people are on a need to know basis, right? You have staff that report to you. Everything that's going on above you in terms of upper management leadership that you might be privy to, you're not necessarily communicating that to your staff, right? They're on a need to know basis on a lot of different things. Right? Exactly. It does sound like the Matrix, Chris. Right? And so are you lying to your staff in those cases? Are you protecting your staff? Another good one is children. There's a lot of things that we do not discuss with our kids. One big one is finances, right? A lot of times your kids have no idea if you're financially strapped, if you're having a hard time with money. You keep that away from the kids and you make their life look as cushy as you can. There's some people that say you need to sit down and talk to your kids about money because they need to understand how money works and what's going on in the household. There's other people that say that's not something that a child should have to worry about, is where money, how things are happening in the house. Two different belief systems. Who's right? Who's wrong? For some kids, teaching them about money early would have them, one, learn gratitude. They would learn about money management. They would learn about spending plans and budgeting, right? Good evening, Sandra. Thank you for tuning in. So why not talk to them about money? But for some kids, they get stressed and now they think they need to come and help mommy and daddy by getting a job, or they might go do something illegal to come help pay the bills. So each child's interpretation of that money conversation will look a little bit differently. And it often has a lot to do with the delivery of the conversation, but not all the time. Sometimes you can mean well and do the best job in your delivery. Think about all your speaking points and someone can still misunderstand you. If you know what I'm talking about, put it in the chat. Talk your talk, coach. Talk your talk, coach. Sometimes you can do everything in your power to try to articulate what you mean and say what you mean, and someone can still go and change all your words up and say you said something else, right? So this isn't foolproof, folks. Like, at the end of the day, you have to really, really be really comfortable in your own skin and what it is that you're trying to say, and still be open to feedback. Okay, so we've covered what is a belief. Just to go back over this again, Belief is acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. It's trust, it's faith, or the confidence in someone or something. So talk about Sean Puffy Combs, right? There's some people that have already decided who he is, and what he has done. Question is, how much research have you done? What do you really know about him? What do any of us know about him? How do we know that any of the information that's being provided to us about his situation is true? And as you can see, the internet has already grabbed a hold of it, ran with it. And how can this man ever have a fair trial? With the way things are going, there's some people that have already decided that he's guilty, and that he did it, and that this has been being said about him for decades. So he had to have done it. Challenge these perspectives, people. We are such a judgmental society. We jump to conclusions, which I didn't cover this one yet, but that is called a cognitive distortion. When you live in a polarized thinking where things are only black or white, when you jump to conclusions, when you think that you're always right, these are all things that you have to challenge, because guess what? None of us are always right. There's always a different way of looking at things. Unfortunately, there's a lot of gray in this world. There's a lot of gray. Everything isn't just black or white. I think about loss of life. You know, if someone did it because somebody attacked them and they unalive, I hate that, but that's the new thing people say, right? They unalive somebody. Depending on the circumstances, some people might be like, hey, I can understand that. Someone, molests a child and someone loses it and harms that person. A lot of people could understand why that person did that and took that person's life. We all have different belief systems on what we will use as justification for behaviors that we also say are not good behaviors, or they're bad, right? So good or bad. So what are some other examples of confirmation bias, right? You want to call in and you want to talk about this. If this is something that you've experienced, you can call in at 617-238-7111. The chat is lively. We got people in the chat. You can also share your thoughts and opinions in the chat. And as you guys know, you're tuned into the Urban Heat 98.1 FM. This is Conversations with Coach La, your favorite around the way therapist. Every Sunday night, we have conversations that debunk myths about mental health and conversations that will help you improve your mental health. And so I wanted to talk about this one because this is big in therapy, which is bias, right? Prejudice in the favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared to another, usually in a way considered to be unfair. We all have bias. Contrary to popular belief, we all have bias. We all have lied. I know. How can you say that, Coach? Because we have. Everybody has lied. Has lied and decided to either do it for preservation of self, to protect someone because you're at work and you can't tell somebody something, so you pretend to not know, willful blindness. And so when we think about that, a lot of us say, you know what, I want people to be truthful with me. I want people to tell me the truth. I challenge everyone that's listening to really think about what that would mean if people were to always tell you the truth. Could you handle the truth? Could you really handle people really telling you about yourself? Telling you, just as Chris said, bringing the matrix of the world, these contradictions to life. I once had somebody that, that thought that a particular person was their father, and then found out later in life that wasn't their dad. Now, for some people, they're like, the person, they want to know, but some people don't want to know. Some people don't want to know that their spouse or their mate is cheating on them. Some people don't want to know. And I think is that once you find out the truth, there's a level of accountability of what do you do with the truth once you find out? What do you do with it? You can call in 617-238-7111. Have you ever told a lie? Or have you ever had someone tell you the truth and you either wanted it, you wish you didn't know? If you could take it back, you would take it back, and you would unknow what you knew. As a therapist, people tell me the truth a lot. I hold a lot of truths, right? A lot of stuff is told to me. And it's one of the other reasons why therapy is good, because you can like drop all your secrets and stuff on your therapist. It's like having an attorney-client privilege. And some of the things that people are holding, they haven't gotten to a place yet that they can tell people or tell their truth to people. And part of it is because of judgment and because of confirmation bias. Once you tell your truth, people will utilize that to make a final thought on who you are. They will generalize you. They will put you in a box. They will decide that whatever that was, that means that that's who you are, or will remind you of what you've done in the past. And some people fear that so much that they can't be truthful, because it's like, I can't walk away from this or grow from this. People are going to always remember. So case in point, people who have had a crime or committed a crime and they go to jail, they serve their time. Look how we are set up in a society that you can't get past that. They hold that against you, that that's who you are. And ultimately, a lot of people can't get away from that. They can't move forward from that, because where's the empathy? Where's the reprieve once you've served your time? That is forever now. It's like you got a scarlet letter on you, and you're forever going to be seen as a criminal. I challenge that, though. I challenge people to start their own businesses, create their own narratives, and take their life back. Because who are we as a society to decide that somebody that's it, that's the end of their story, because they made a mistake, they had poor judgment? Who decides? Who makes that decision that this is who you're supposed to be for the rest of your life, and you can't move forward? So I don't agree with that. I think there is a piece of folks can change if they want to. They can move forward if they want to. But I also believe that there's some things that are just so hideous. You know, when you do something and you harm a child, that's difficult for me to stomach. Do I still believe they deserve an opportunity to try to do better in their life? Yes, but that is a hard one to stomach. And I really wish that people would get the support and the help that they need to not perpetuate harming children sexually, physically. These are the most vulnerable people. Little people are the most vulnerable people. They deserve to be protected. So that's one of my beliefs, is that I don't think we should harm kids. I don't think that little kids should be hurt, right? That one hurts my heart. I think we should, that one is just a hard one for me. That's a hard no for me. But again, there's my belief system, right? As a therapist, that's been one of my hard ones too, is if somebody discloses that, how do I work with them, and how do I move through that within myself? But I think if you're in a place that you're asking for help and you want to process that and you want to move forward to be a better person, I can respect that. And so that's how I process. How do you process? So we talked about confirmation bias. We talked about beliefs. We talked about duality of reality. What about moving forward, and how do you start to change this if this is something that you're seeing, that you're experiencing, right? Of course, I'm going to always advocate people to go to therapy, but I really am a big fan of journaling. I'm a big fan of having the difficult conversations and bringing things to the light. So that means becoming your authentic self and talking about some of the things that could be controversial, like me talking about just now, you know, how I feel about people who harm kids. Like that's a hard one for me. And that's in form of sexual or physical. But again, there's some people who don't look at that the same way. Some people believe that, spare the rod, spoil the child. And I think there's degrees to physical discipline, right? Again, that's my belief system. There's other people out there that don't believe the same thing I believe. There's some people that be like, that child needs a butt whooping, because we're on the air. I don't know. Maybe I can't say that word, but y'all know what I'm talking about. So it's very different sitting here in the studio, right? I'm so used to having a guest. Although I know you guys are there because I can see that you're online and you're listening. And I know people are listening through iHeartRadio. Shout out to y'all, everybody on Instagram and LinkedIn. I want to leave some nuggets for people to be able to go back and think about what is the psychological and emotional impact of confronting contradicting truths. There's a reason why people don't want to let go of their belief system, and because that is so much a part of their identity. What you believe formulates who you say you are. So when it gets challenged and you have to move away from that, then the question becomes, who am I now? Makes me think a lot about sexuality and gender, right? And so if I'm born into this world as a woman, but I don't feel like I'm a woman, and then I decide that I want to switch my gender to become a man, what does that mean in terms of all of the support systems, my family, those around me? Do I need a whole new support system, a whole new family? Are people going to accept me? All of these things become so much part of the factors that hinder people from living in their truth. Because if I love my family, I love my religion, I love the school I'm in, I love my friends, I love all of these things, I don't want to lose any of that. And if I open up and tell people about who I am or what I'm feeling, I could lose everything. Case in point, why somebody would lie, or you would have somebody on the down low. It's hard to potentially think about your whole world being flipped upside down if you share what you really think. So the psychological and emotional impact of challenging that is really significant. So a lot of people come to therapy to think about, how do I have the whole idea of coming out, right? Or the whole idea of disclosing that you're going to change your gender. That's like a big deal for folks. Deciding you don't want to be married anymore, and you have a friend group. Your family loves the person. You have your kids. That is a big deal, right? And so how do you move from coming out of a situation that I still care about you, I want to wish you well, but I no longer want to be married to you? I know I said death to his part, but I've changed my mind and I don't want to do this anymore. And people get villainized for growing. They get villainized for changing their mind. And that is difficult, right? And so when we think about why we need to give empathy, why we need to have self-compassion, is we need space to be able to change and to grow. And what I wanted when I was 20 versus what I want at 45 could look very different. And not everybody's ready for these shifts in perspective and shifts in belief systems. We almost put people in a box that they have to stay the same. So I go back to Sean Puffy Combs. This whole idea that he has this other personality and these other things that he was into, and that there's a possibility that he could have done all of these things and had this evil side, right? This side that isn't this family guy, but this other side. Anybody that's grown up in the hood, if you grew up in the hood, give me a virtual high five if you know about growing up in the hood, right? Thank you, Karen. I appreciate you. Karen said this is a great topic. I thought so too. I hope y'all are getting some good jewels and nuggets out of it, right? So if you grew up in the hood, there's so much contradiction. If you've ever had a family member that was your favorite cousin, favorite uncle, you love them to death. They look out for you. They're great, right? They can't do no wrong in your eyes. But out in them streets, oh man, they're a nemesis. They're a problem in society. They don't play. They probably got some bodies, you know, they out there doing the 1-2 in the streets. That's a concept of a duality of reality. So when a lot of these things happen in the community, we'll say, oh, they were such a great person and I just loved him. No, I don't. Come on, family. Sometimes we be knowing that people have two sides to them. We see it in most of our favorite crime shows where we got this homebody that comes home and has a wife, has his kids, and then out in the streets he got his side woman, and he's doing a whole nother life. He got two lives. And in both cases, both things about that person is true. I know that's a hard thing for people to grapple with, but there's a possibility that, you know, our boy, Mr. Puffy P. Diddy, did these things. There's also a possibility that he didn't do these things. The reality of it is none of us quite really know, unless you were there, unless you saw it for yourself, or you're one of the people, and even with the people who are reporting it, we don't know what their motives are, right? They also could have some motives that are not completely transparent. This is why the idea of always believe the victim is difficult to just take that on and just say that's true, because there are people out there who've made that difficult for you to just believe anything that's said, because people do lie. People do manipulate people. People do blackmail folks. It's true. Both of these realities can be true. So I just challenge people to pause. And before you jump on the bandwagon to crucify people, what do you really know? What do you really know? What are you basing it on? And this, as people of color, we really got to do better with that. Is just pause for a second and ask more questions. Historically, mainstream media has always put out propaganda about people of color. They put out propaganda that said that we were supposed to be slaves. They put out propaganda that said that our brains were smaller than everyone else's. They put out propaganda to justify doing procedures on Black women, that we could withstand more pain than a white woman. And so this is why they would, you know, cutting us up and doing certain things from a gynecology perspective. They had a narrative about everything to justify different behaviors. Ask more questions and slow your roll, right? Again, I don't know what he did or what he didn't do, but what I'm not going to do is just jump on the bandwagon and start perpetuating all this stuff without knowing what it is. That is called confirmation bias. Yes, we have some information, but if you just run with it without questioning it, because it fits the narrative, like, yep, I know he did it. They've been saying that for years. How do we know, right? Where's the evidence? We need more evidence. And I just don't see how the man would ever get a fair trial the way the internet is just, you know, the internet for the win again. All right. So what else did I want to talk to you guys about? So we've covered a lot of ground. If you are on the other side and any of this is sort of like making the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, or you're feeling like, you know, you want to challenge it, I call in 617-238-7111. Of course, you can watch the replay tomorrow, add your comments. What I really want to do more than anything else is to encourage everyone who's listening to have the conversations. Start a different narrative online. Challenge what people are posting. And I get, at the end of the day, especially as Black folks, we like a good roast, right? We're going to roast you. We're going to come for you. We're going to talk about it all. We use humor to deal often with sadness and trauma. Right? That, you know, humor and song and entertainment, right, is very much part of our coping strategies. So coping strategies with all of this often looks like defense mechanisms. And what those can be is you just literally repress it all. You just don't deal with it, right? You can deflect, project, and go into a space of like, you don't see it. Some of that is not even voting, right? So I'm not even going to engage. How I'm gonna deal with the confirmation bias, how I'm gonna deal with the duality of what's going on in the world. I'm just not gonna engage, right? I'm gonna drink, I'm gonna smoke, I'm gonna have sex, I'm gonna shop, I'm gonna go live in my bubble and put my blinders on and act like none of this stuff is happening, right? If that's one of your coping strategies, eventually your world gets shooken up, right? And that's often what is the trigger or the switch that brings people to therapy. You're functioning well, you're high functioning, life is going good, you know, you ain't got a care in the world, and then somebody you least expect dies. Your investments fail. You find out the company, like think about Enron. I might be aging myself, but some of y'all may remember Enron. The investment that you have, you find out they lied about all of their paperwork, and the company is valued at zero, and you lose everything. Women, you're married, men too, you're married, and you find out your spouse is cheating, or you found out your partner's on the down low. You find out they didn't have a baby on you and they got a whole nother family, right? All of these things shake you to your core in terms of your belief system and what you think is happening. And then you find out everything that you thought was going on is not really going on. You know what helps me is I now appreciate everything and I expect nothing, right? I have learned that people are going to be people. I have learned that people lie. I have learned that there's always another side to the story. I have learned that people will tell you one thing and do something else. I have learned that no matter what is going on in the world, depending on the circumstances, folks will switch up and they will do something that's what you think is out of character. I have learned that sometimes you have to morph out of character to survive in certain scenarios. Think about if somebody is locked up, the things that they have to do once they become incarcerated, they may have never thought they would do. I'm a survivor of domestic violence and never thought I would be in a domestic situation with where a man that I thought loved me and I loved him would put his hands on me. You know, I just didn't see that in my trajectory. And when I found myself in that situation versus what I thought I would do if I ever was in that situation looked very different. And that was a valuable lesson about being challenged, your belief system being challenged on what you will do until you're actually in that situation. Why do I say all of this? Why am I bringing this all up? Because we have to have more self-compassion with our own journey. We're spiritual beings doing this thing called life. And we have to have more patience and understanding that no one really has it figured out, people. That is the gag, right? Like most people really don't have it figured out. And even though you got parents and you got elders and you got all these great people that we look up to, the reality of it is that most of them didn't know what they were doing either. There was a story that I read, and it was about cooking. And I'm going to paraphrase it to the best of my ability. But long story short, they were making a ham, and they would cut off both ends of the ham. And this procedure or this, way of making the ham had been passed down to all of the women in this family. And one day, one of the young ladies in the family asked a very brilliant question. Why do we cut off both ends of the ham? And everybody said, well, we don't know. That's just always the way we've done it. She goes, well, why did we start doing it like that? I don't know. You should ask your grandmother. We learned the recipe from her. Okay. I'm going to ask my grandmother. So the young lady asked grandma, she said, Grandma, why do we cut off both ends of the ham? She goes, oh, honey, I only did that because the pan was too small. There wasn't no rhyme or reason to it. The ham didn't fit in the pan that I had, so I had to cut both ends off. So sometimes when we don't ask questions about why things are the way they are, or why people do what they do, you just repeat stuff, and you never realize that it was a adaptation. It was a modification. It was, shout out to Chris, it was the person doing the matrix, right? To figure out how to survive or navigate. And I'm challenging us to start thriving and not always be in survival mode. But that story always sat with me, and it made me question, learned behaviors. And similar to confirmation bias, your belief system is grounded in learned behaviors. It's grounded in what you value. And the question is, why do you value what you value? Why do you believe what you believe? And if it's simply because that's what you learned from your family, that's what you were taught. Have you ever sat down with your parents or with who you admire and asked them the question, why are you cutting off both ends of the ham? Why do you move the way you move? That's why I love doing conversations with Coach Law. And I told you guys, those that are new to the show, that this show is inspired by my dad, who passed away 6 years ago. And me and my dad would have some really dope conversations, and I was able to be my authentic self. He would even let me curse sometimes and talk about things that were going on in my life, things that were embarrassed, things that I was ashamed about. I so miss him. And I said, what if, people would just start having conversations like this with whoever they trust, be it their father, their uncle, their husbands, their sisters, their friends. How might that change their perspectives? How might that change people needing to go to therapy? If you have one person that you can just talk to and be your real self, your messy self, your unfiltered self, you are blessed. You are blessed if you have one place where you can take off the mask and not have to lie and not have to be anything other than who you are, even if it's messy, even if it's, not necessarily accepted by mainstream. And that one person that gives permission to challenge your perspectives, your belief systems, and your values. That, to me, is, if you can find a dope therapist, your therapist is often that person. But if you have people in your circle that are like that, call them up and thank them. Thank them for being dope, for being authentic, because the more you can be yourself, you give other people permission to be their self. And if Puffy, just had people around him that challenged the narrative and said, yo, man, what are you doing? You're moving funny. Or, and even if maybe he did, and maybe you just didn't want to listen, because also people think that people don't have people around them that are telling them this. Sometimes they do. And sometimes people are just hard-headed and don't want to listen. They want to move the way they want to move. And your decisions eventually will have consequences. There is some kind of, you pay for something somewhere, somehow. It'll show up someplace. So, all right, y'all, we're getting to the final 15 minutes of the show. I guess none of y'all was brave enough to call in tonight, which is cool. I'm all right with, sitting here and just talking to y'all, because I know you're there. And for somebody out there, you needed to hear this message. And I hope that it's helping you, and that you feel seen, heard, understood, and that this challenges you to go push the envelope a little bit more on your thought process, that it encourages you to journal, that it encourages you maybe to go and schedule a session with your therapist to talk about these concepts, and to think about where in your life confirmation bias is showing up. Where in your life are you looking for evidence to justify your belief system, and where you may want to challenge that narrative? And there's so many different controversial topics, from sexuality, religion, financial, community. There's so many different areas where some people need to challenge their thinking to how they're also not inviting different, how they're not inviting the possibility of being wrong, how we're shunning people, how we're not thinking or trying to understand other people's perspectives and where they came from. And it goes both ways, people. We also have to be able to reciprocate that back, that when we decide to change, shift, plot twist, the other person needs time to adjust, because you're shifting what they believe to be true. The confidence that they had in what it was is no longer what it is. And that is a big pill to swallow, people. So I just want us to give more love, be more kind to one another, be less judgmental, right? Because some of the things that really make us operate in confirmation bias is jumping to conclusions. You know, when we think about, one of the big ones is like when someone witnesses a crime and is convinced that the suspect's identity is what it is, based on an initial impression without interpreting any other details that fit or to challenge the misconception, the preconceived notions, right? There's so many things like that that we do. Denying, evidence, like if it's an investment and you only want to look at all of the positive upside and you don't want to look at any of the possibility of any of the negatives. There's so many different aspects of that. I mean, I could have a whole nother conversation, but there's 3 types of confirmation bias. There's selective attention, where people tend to focus on information that confirms the existing beliefs while ignoring any contradictory evidence. There's interpretation bias, where even neutral information can be interpreted in a way that supports pre-existing beliefs. And then there's memory bias, where people may selectively recall information that aligns with their existing beliefs. So selective attention, interpretation bias, and memory bias. And none of us are exempt from this, right? It's just part of human nature. It's part of the things that sort of we all will have happen at certain times. It's just that when someone calls you out on it, don't automatically think that it's not possible that you could be wrong, So I'm gonna do some shout outs real quick to people. Shout out to Chris. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for letting me know I'm dropping gems. I appreciate you being here. Shout out to Sandra Jackson. Good evening. Shout out to Miss Karen Andrews. I appreciate you tuning in. Shout out to LaDonna. Thank you so much, my friend, for tuning in. I know I got you up past your bedtime, so I appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you guys share the live and keep the conversation going. I know a lot of people are talking about what's going on in the media, and I hope tonight's conversation was fruitful. I hope you learned something that you maybe didn't know, or maybe I reiterated something that you did know. I also, I got a couple people that are tuned in from Instagram. I recently got my eyes checked, y'all, and I got to get a new prescription because I definitely cannot see stuff the way I used to. That so sucks. As you get older, your eyes change, your body's changing, everything's changing. So, but let's rethink and relearn and grow together, people. Let's really sit and reflect on why we believe what we believe and challenge other people to do the same thing. I think the world would be a better place if we did that. I think we really would find ourselves being less judgmental. I think we would find ourselves actually being kinder to ourselves, because what I've learned, when you're hard on the world, you're also usually really hard on you too. So we want people to start to realize that this thing is difficult. Navigating the world, navigating life, adulting is not easy, and most of us did not get all of the tools to properly do so. We've had to do trial and error. A lot of us have completely lost everything, hit rock bottom, had to build ourselves back up, not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Some of us have had multiple relationships that didn't go well, marriages that didn't go well, have had multiple children, and with our first child, second child, really didn't know what we were doing, maybe didn't really get it right until our 3rd or 4th child. And our other children, call us out on it. I grew up in a family of 6, and I definitely got different versions of my parents as they matured and grew and had more kids. I only have 1 child, but I know that I have grown and evolved in terms of how I have been parenting him. Hey, Bella Ray, what's going on, girl? Thank you for tuning in. And I love that you love the show. I was a little nervous coming on here by myself, right? Because I was like, oh man, I always have a guest. And I'm having a live bet on self moment. Of course, I've done this live show by myself previously, but getting on here and just literally doing almost like a motivational speech to an audience that of some I can see, some I can't see, but I need the energy, right? I feed off of the energy of the crowd. I like seeing facial expressions and listening to people's verbal responses back to me. So this definitely is challenging me to fit in my own level of confidence in that what I'm sharing is valuable. I don't care who you are. We all have moments of imposter syndrome, moments of self-doubt. Those that say that they don't, shout out to you, because that might be your strategy, is that if you always are ready and you always are confident, or you tell yourself that, then you'll never not be confident. But that ain't me. That ain't my story. That ain't my testimony. I get nervous. And every week when I come on, I pray and I ask for clarity that I can share some nuggets for those that are live, or those that will listen to the replay, or those that will listen to the podcast version, that I am adding value to the world, and that this is my legacy. If I leave tomorrow and today's my last breath, that this last episode, that I left something that would make the world a better place, right? And that's why I come on here every week at 10 o'clock. I chose 10 o'clock because I know there's a lot of people who have insomnia. There's a lot of people out there that's strolling the internet. There's something called Twitch, where people are just watching people do absolutely nothing. You know, play video games, sit and just eat, watch TV, and they're just watching people's lives. 20,000 people on some of these lives, just watching people's lives, just talking to each other through a chat. And I said to myself, I'm going to stay with this, Lord. This is what you've told me to do. I'm going to stay with this. And at some point, maybe you'll send people, more people. So share the live. More people will come on here and listen and get some positive energy and get some things that can actually grow and develop their thinking patterns, and that people won't just mindlessly watch somebody else eat, right? Like, you know, going on here and I have to just trust and not get caught up in the numbers or how many people are here, and just do what I've been assigned to do. And knowing that this is leaving a mark, and that somebody tomorrow, the next day, even if one person finds value in it, then I've done my job. So I appreciate everybody that's on the live, that's letting me know that they're getting something out of it, because that's the extra little push that I need. You know, y'all are filling my cup as well. So I appreciate every single person that's come on, and that is she was like, I was listening on the app, but I'm like, where is she? Okay, Bella Ray, I like that. I appreciate that. I am your favorite around the way therapist. I wanted to debunk myths that are connected to mental health. Mental health is just like your physical health. It has everything to do about what you see, what you read, who you talk to, the environments that you're in. It's not this mystical thing. And that's why I'm here. I also want to look like this and let you see that, you know, your therapist can look like you and be cool and be down to earth and approachable, right? It's not this thing where I'm coming in, I'm this expert that's so far removed from the world. I'm here to be a listening ear and to challenge your thoughts and to help you become the best version of yourself. So tune in every Sunday right here on the Urban Heat, 98.1 FM. We are radio with a purpose. And I'm your favorite around the way therapist. They call me Coach, baby. I have had a good time talking to y'all tonight. I appreciate y'all. I probably got another 30 seconds before Mr. Mark Harris is going to jump on here and tell y'all about who we are and what we do. And I'll be back next week. I got a whole lineup of guests over the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be real good. So make sure you tell a friend. to come and join the conversation next week, 10 p.m. right here on the Urban Heat, because we are radio with a purpose next, and then tune in tomorrow for the Morning Cafe. It is a hoot. And I'll see y'all next week right here. See y'all later.
Unorthodox radio from Boston and beyond. Meet 981fm.com and iHeartStation.